Society 13 Podcast Network. Redefining podcasts. Society-13.com.
I like to listen.
History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this 144th episode of the History Goes Bump podcast.
Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind.
I am your host, Diane.
And this is Denise.
And on today's episode, we have a special guest joining us, a listener from over in the United Kingdom, and that would be Alana Ashby. How are you, Alana?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys?
We're fabulous.
Yes, doing well.
Well, Bob Sherfield had suggested that we do Haunted Pluckley Village, and then along came Alana, and she suggested it as well and offered to do the research and come on to tell us about it. So we're looking forward to hearing that from you, Alana. And also, she has shared an amazing, supernatural, deeply personal story with us that we will be sharing with all of you guys on the Halloween episode. You are absolutely going to love the story, and it is so great. I'm going to save it for the last one we do on the special.
Yeah, it's a fantastic personal story. So thank you so much for giving that to us, Alana.
Before we get into talking about Pluckley Village, we want to point you in the direction of our website, historygoesbump.com. And Denise, if people want to get a hold of us and send us some feedback, where can they do that?
They can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com.
And we do have a couple of emails to share. First of all, Scott Stuller, who had suggested Hotel Jeffrey to us, wanted to do a little follow-up. And he let us know that he had informed a local paper there about our episode on the Hotel Jeffrey. And Denise, they actually mentioned us on the Mariposa Gazette.
Oh, that is very cool.
Yeah, it says, Hotel Jeffrey featured on Haunted Locations podcast. This is by Matt Johnson. If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you going to call? Not Ghostbusters. One local man decided to call on an internet podcast to look into the Hotel Jeffrey in Coulterville. The hotel was featured in a 32-minute podcast called History Goes Bump. Isn't that cool?
I think that's very cool.
Now, I think there's more to this story, but you have to be a subscriber in order to read the rest of it. But I thought that's pretty cool that we got mentioned in there. So thank you, Scott, for doing that. And he also did a little bit of sleuthing for us because, you know, we kept wondering about what state the hotel was in. Is it opened yet? Have they gotten it refurbished?
Yeah, and we always appreciate our spook sleuths.
So he said, I have since gone out to Coulterville to find out a little more about the restoration of this building. Looking at this hotel from the outside, you would never know that there was a fire. I talked to a docent at the local history center, and he told me to talk to Sarah, the owner. He said I may find her at the Cafe General Store. I went in and was told I just missed her. The Magnolia Saloon is open, so I went in and ordered a beer to talk to the bartender. And the bartender said that he doesn't see her very much. I gave him the info about your podcast and told him to pass it along to Sarah. I knocked on the front doors to the Jeffrey, but no one answered. I talked to several locals in the nearby businesses, and no one knew what was going on with the Jeffrey at this time. So we don't know still. We placed a phone call, didn't get anything back. So I'm guessing that it's still under refurbishment. They haven't officially opened it yet.
That's what I would think. Otherwise, he could have probably gone right up and in.
We're hoping that they do get it open soon, though. That would be very good. Then Dawn sent us an email after listening to our last episode, which featured the witch house in Salem. She said, hello, Diane and Denise. I love, love, love your show. I only found it a couple of weeks ago, so color me binge. I listened to your show on the witch house and heard that you had only seen the outside. My husband and I did visit the inside about 2 years ago. I'm enclosing some photos for you if you're interested to see them. And what I will do is post these in the show notes under the witch house so that you guys, if you'd like to see these interior pictures, you can do that. For the most part, the downstairs was really interesting. So much rich history in the items, and we adored the fireplaces. However, the energy for me changed upstairs. I had a tougher time staying near the room that may have been the children's room. It had a tiny tea set and a cradle in the corner. When you look at the photo, it could be a trick of shadows and light, but it has feels to it, burr. And there is a weird little white anomaly that's kind of above the tea set. So I don't know if it was like something that was on the back wall, what it is, but there's something a little different in that picture. Directly across from that room is the master bedroom, which didn't feel as strongly as the last. Standing in between the rooms so that I could see into either, I felt strongly uncomfortable with the children's room and nudged my husband to get moving back downstairs. We had gone in the month of May and the house was fairly empty when we visited. It's quite beautiful and I would definitely take another trip in if we go again. Thanks so much for so many hours of listening, enjoyment, and history. Also, I'll be writing back in. There are a few more stories I'd love to share with you.
And we heard from Atticus on the website. I've been listening and enjoying the show for a full year now and have yet to write a review or comment, so here goes. I absolutely love the show. We listen to it in the car, in the mornings getting ready for work, and on our back patio in the evening. The hosts are positively fetching and outgoing, always making us laugh along with them. Thank you for the spooks. We hope to hear more and more. And we hope to keep bringing you more and more. So thank you so much for that comment, Atticus.
We want to thank McKenna for her comments over on Instagram. And also we got a message on Instagram from ERD3. Me and my girlfriend listen to the podcast every night before we go to sleep. We love listening to it and learning so much about the history behind historical events. We hope to hear more soon. And they asked us to do another location in Texas. Well, I told them we do have one coming up. I believe we're going to be doing something in Galveston next month. So Angie also posted in the Spooktacular Crew a picture that a friend of hers took and a tale to go with it. We have the story that she shared with us and also the picture in the show notes today. My friend had an experience this past weekend about the Lady in Blue. I told him about History Goes Bump podcast and what it is about and wanted to share a story with you all. He said I could, so here's a story. So Maggie and I go to have our 2-year anniversary dinner at the distillery in Moss Beach Saturday night. We read the story about the Lady in Blue haunting the restaurant since the 1930s. We learn that she was found dead on the beach right outside the restaurant and was wearing a blue dress. Little did we know that she likes to see people having fun and celebrating love. By coincidence, Maggie wore a blue dress and I wore a blue suit. Boy, were they tempting fate. We then learned that when she appears to people, her dress is now black. So we jokingly called out to her by name, Kate, and tell her that we're celebrating our anniversary and we'd like for her to visit our table. Throughout our dinner, she never came. Maggie watched as an eerie fog rolled in from the sea and wanted to capture a scary shot from our window front table. She was able to capture the fire pits from outside, but due to the glass, the top half of the image was a reflection of the interior and patrons dining. Or so we thought. A woman can be seen standing under the light and waiting at the bar, just like in the original story. Believe me, that was not a waitress, nor was anyone else standing in that position. Be careful what you ask for, because she came to visit. And Denise, I posted the picture here, and I put a circle around what they were talking about. What do you think?
I think that is very, very compelling. And I also think this is a good lesson for all of our listeners to never, ever tempt the spirits.
Yeah, that's what you get. When I posted this on our Instagram, some people said, well, it was probably just somebody who was standing there. But when you look at all the other people in the picture, it's almost like she's higher up than they are. And they're very clear and she's not as clear. And I don't know. You guys know I am very skeptical when it comes to pictures, and most of the time I poo-poo them because I trust Angie and she, I'm sure, trusts her friend, and they would have no reason to make this up. And it looks like this person is wearing a black dress to me. I don't know. That looks like an apparition in that picture. I'm pretty convinced that they got something unusual there. Could be a weird reflection, could be pareidolia, who knows? But from what I'm looking at here, it looks like something got caught there. So if you guys want to check that out, that will be in the show notes under Haunted Pluckley Village. And I've got it on our Instagram as well. And I'll tweet it out and stuff and see what people think. Also, I have a new podcast for you guys to check out. I just discovered because it just started. They only have a few episodes. It's a husband and wife team, so you know we love those, Denise. It's from Welcome Little Stranger, and the name of the podcast is The Most Wonderful Wonder. And they describe it as Gothic Americana folk noir. They make up their own folk songs to go with the stories that they're telling. And the stories incorporate bizarre things in history, which we love, tragedy, true crime, folklore, strange true tales. I believe on their first show, I was listening to it and I went, oh, this story sounds really familiar to me, only it was a lot more detailed. Remember that Moment in Oddity we did way back when we first started the podcast that was about that criminal? They skinned him and I believe it was...
Oh,
was it the lawyer?
The lawyer made his shoes out of him?
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember
They
that.
did that story, only they really fleshed it out. Can I say it that way?
Oh, Diane.
Anyway, it's a great show. Highly recommend you guys check it out. I think it'll be up a lot of your alleys. And it's history with weird. So what's not to love about it? We also, if you guys are into Disney and Disney podcasts, Podcateers, check that one out as well. Really been enjoying that show. All right. We want to welcome to the Spooktacular Crew, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie.
Lance.
Hey, Lance.
Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen.
Anthony.
Hey, Anthony.
And McKenna.
Hey, McKenna.
All right, ladies, are you ready to go to Haunted Pluckley Village?
Yes, we are.
Let's do it.
History Goes Bump is entirely listener supported. Become an executive producer for as little as $1 a month. Get listed on the website and invited to exclusive virtual meetups. For $5 a month, you get that and exclusive bonus content like the Haunted True Crime Bonus Cast. For $10 and above a month, you'll get all that plus awesome History Goes Bump gear. Check out patreon.com/historygoesbump, or you can support us via PayPal. Click the Support the Show tab at historygoesbump.com for more information.
History is full of oddities, curiosities, mysteries, and the truly bizarre. Welcome to This Moment in Oddity.
This Moment in Oddity was suggested by listener Timothy Rich. Spring Grove Cemetery in Ohio is the largest nonprofit cemetery in the United States. The grounds are beautiful and statues dot the landscape. There's a peculiar tombstone that features a partial bust of the man buried beneath it, and it has inspired a legend. According to the tale, the man buried here requested in his will that his eyes be removed and placed in the socket of the bust. The eyes are indeed lifelike, but as we all know, eyes are some of the first parts of the body to decompose. The legend continues that the bust will even turn and look at people. The truth is that the eyes can be seen from a distance, and they are a bit disturbing. They are made from glass and painted to appear real, and as happens with paintings, the eyes seem to follow you. So when you find yourself in Spring Grove Cemetery, and you get that eerie feeling that someone is watching you, it just might be the bust of some dead guy with realistic eyes. And that certainly is odd.
Are you afraid of the dark?
This Day in History. This Day in History is by Richard Schaefer. On this day, August 22nd, in 1798, the French landed 1,000 soldiers under General Humbert in County Mayo during the Irish Rebellion of 1798. The French were to assist the rebels in their fight against the British. The United Irishmen, a revolutionary group heavily influenced by the revolutions in both France and America, led the charge in the fight for Irish independence. The main uprisings and bloody guerrilla warfare had already taken their toll, and the British and their loyalist factions had been successful at beating back and destroying rebel forces. The 1,000 troops linked up with about 5,000 Irish rebels, and they struck a surprising winning blow against British forces. Despite the early success, Irish rebel forces and French troops were routed, captured, and destroyed. Irish rebels were executed, and the French troops that were captured were traded for British prisoners of war.
Hello, this is Victoria from victoriaslift.com. When I'm not taking those who must choose their destiny for a ride on the lift, I'm listening to History Goes Bump podcast. History isn't boring, it's terrifying. The past remains with us, and so do its spirits. Can you hear them calling? They want you to know their stories. Listen now to their voices and the truth from the past.
Guinness World Records has named Pluckley Village the most haunted village in England. Pluckley dates back to the 11th century and was owned by the Archbishop of Canterbury. It is located on a hill in Kent, and through the decades it had expanded down the hill until the Black Death decimated the population in the 14th century and sent survivors back up the hill. One of the more well-known areas is the Daring Wood, named for one of the more well-known families to live in the area. There are reports of as many as 16 ghosts in this village. And so where exactly is Pluckley?
So the village of Pluckley is in Kent, which is south of London in the UK.
Okay, about how far out of London is that?
I would say it's around, I don't even know. I'd say it's about an hour and a half outside of the city of London. But London's a very strange place because it's got lots of London boroughs. So technically up till about Bromley, Kent, you can class as a London borough. And it's about 40 minutes from Bromley. So yeah, I'd say about 2 hours from the city centre itself in London.
About how many people live in Pluckley?
There's about just over 1,000 people that live in Pluckley village itself. It's quite a tourist haven, so there are lots of people that come in and out of Pluckley, but actual residents, I think it's just over 1,000. I think it's 1,049 people that live there, I think it is.
What makes this particularly special, and I don't know if that's why people tend to go there, but apparently it's supposed to be one of the most haunted villages there.
It's supposed to be the most haunted village.
The most, not one of the most.
Yes, it's supposed to be the most apparently haunted village in the UK. It was actually in the Guinness World Records book for being the most haunted village in the UK, which is quite a... I don't know if you have the Guinness World Records in America, but it's quite an award to win that.
Yeah, we definitely do. And I remember one of the first treasured books I ever had was a Guinness Book of World Records, and I just loved reading that thing.
I think most kids in the UK got that for Christmas every year.
Okay. So Pluckley, do you know anything about its origins, how it got started, or anything like that?
So the actual village itself is situated in the top of like the Quarry Hills, which is in the centre of Kent. It's some hills that run through it, and it's a very, I'd say, picturesque and beautiful village. I mean, there's lots of little cottages and houses. There's a church and a parish there. Pluckley itself has kind of only really been known and notified about because of these hauntings that happen there. But it was mentioned in the Domesday writings in 1088. So, I mean, it's been around as long as Domesday, I guess, longer than that. But it kind of really got notoriety in the 15th century onwards.
Okay. Now, the Domesday writings, could you share with people what those are?
The Domesday Book is a large land survey that was done in 1086, which was commissioned by William the Conqueror to assess the extent of the land and resources being owned in England at the time and the extent of the taxes he could raise from those themselves. So it was kind of like your original census, I guess, in a way.
You know, you hear Doomsday Book and you're thinking, are those the writings of Nostradamus or something?
Oh, exactly. I think we all got very excited at school talking about the Doomsday Book, and it was going to talk about lots of horrendous things that happen. And you find out that, oh no, it's actually just talking about how many sheep and cow you've got. One of the things I absolutely love about the UK is how steeped in history things are and how old things are.
No, we definitely want to come visit the United Kingdom and explore the castles and things, because we don't really have castles per se over here. And we're a very, very young country. So it's always nice to go over to places like anywhere in Europe, but like the United Kingdom, and see all the amazing castles and just the history and the architecture. It's just amazing to us.
It is, and I'm very blessed in the fact that I can jump on a train and be in the city of London in 25 minutes. And every time I go there is something new. There's something different. There's a new building that I haven't seen before that's been there since before my great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother. And it's been stood there this whole time and I just haven't noticed it. And they're just stunning. and you see it on TV programs and you see it in films. And I don't think people in the UK, unless you're into history or architecture or into something other than going out clubbing or seeing Big Ben, I don't think people realise how incredibly beautiful London can be. And lots of people that jump on the bandwagon when tourists say, oh, I love the UK and I love London. And people go, oh no, but it's scummy here and it's not very nice here and it's not very nice there. But you forget how beautiful it actually is.
Well, and I think sometimes people take it for granted.
Massively.
Yeah, that you have
definitely.
all those old buildings, because here we just don't have that kind of stuff. We're like, oh,
I
that
think
building's...
when you go to any person from the UK that goes to America, they think they're stepping onto a film set wherever they go. And I think anybody that comes to the UK feels like they're going back in time sometimes.
Exactly, because it's just here. You're lucky if a building is 200 years old, while there, you're like, well, that castle's been here for 6,000-7,000 years.
Exactly. Yeah, just a couple more years than anything that's going across the pond.
Now, whenever we look at these places that are haunted, we like to know the history that's going on there, because you want to figure out, well, why is this place so haunted? And for this to be the most haunted place,
Yeah.
you think there's got to be some major stuff going on here. I know that the Black Death hit that area pretty hard.
Yeah, it did. And for such a small village, they were hit very, very strongly. But Kent itself has kind of got a reputation. It was kind of like smuggler's paradise in Kent, because you were just outside of London. You had lots of farmyards and villages, but you also had lots of parishes and churches, and lots of the gangsters, putting it American, but the villains and the crooks in the UK, they used to meet in sort of village graveyards, because people didn't really sort of go to a village graveyard to do anything other than to spy and to meet up with other villains and things. So it's quite interesting, the fact that lots of quite bad things happened in Kent, and especially Pluckley itself has got lots of, I don't know if you know, it's got 15 reported ghosts, not 15 sightings, but 15 separate ghostly occurrences that happen on a regular basis there. The thing that's quite interesting about it is the fact that Kent is incredibly famous for smuggling, and in the 18th and 19th centuries, sort of gangs would actually sort of push people out of villages to take them over, to use them as grounds for smuggling in and out of both the water, because you're not that far from Ashford, which is by the water, and also to be able to get in and out of London. So it's definitely got some darker sides to it.
Yes, I did know there were quite a few different regular hauntings, and I do know that they also have their infamous Lady in White as well.
They have 2 ladies in white.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just to show off, and a lady in red.
Yes, I knew that they had a lady in white and lady in red, but I didn't realize there was 2 ladies in white. So yeah, they definitely have to show that they are the most haunted.
Oh, of course. We have to trump everybody here.
Show-offs.
Exactly. I think from what I've understood and what I've researched, I think the lady in white and the lady in red, and then the third lady in white, I think they could all be the same person, but I can't tell for 100% sure. A lot of what happens in Pluckley is, from my experience, legend, folklore, has been kind of embellished over the years. I don't doubt for one second that there is paranormal or ghosts that are around. I just think that most people, when they see what they call the lady in white, it could be movement of mist, or it could be a lady that they see. But I'm still a bit curious about this lady in red.
Right. Now, just a question. Have you yourself experienced any paranormal things in Pluckley?
Yes, I have. But mine wasn't, I never got the wonderful experience of a full-bodied apparition. Lots of sounds, lots of bumps and knocks. I went there with some friends, and one of the things that we experienced was actual intelligent responses to questions via knocks and things. And being a sensitive person, I'm still skeptical, because I don't know, when someone somewhere is so famous and 90% of their tourism is based on how haunted somewhere is, I don't know if there are things set up, or, you know, who's listening, who's going to try and wind you up and that kind of thing. So I was very much aware of the situation itself, and my friends were quite girly, and every time there was a knock or anything, you sort of had to wait for them to calm down for about sort of 3 to 5 seconds afterwards, because it was lots of squealing.
That's because you guys were out there tempting the spirits. That always results in squealing.
If only I had heard the podcast before, Denise, I promise I would not have tempted the spirits. I promise you.
So when you asked them the questions, what kind of questions were you asking? Like, is anybody here? Were you asking what kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, we've got a TV program that kind of like you guys have got your ghost hunters and your ghost adventures. We had Most Haunted, which is by a lady called Yvette Fielding. There's been some very questionable sightings and shows to the point where they've kind of been under a magnifying glass and were pulled apart for their, I don't know if you've heard of him, very infamous, I'm not going to say famous because he's a pain in the bum, but an infamous psychic called Derek Akora.
Oh, I don't think we've heard of him. Not legit. He
kind of got, there's an episode where he kind of got caught out of making things up. And it was really sad because I think for many years everybody was like, this is the best thing that's ever been on television since Strange But True, which was another really good program back when I was a kid. They reenacted events and it was like, do you believe in it or don't you believe in it? It was really cool. It was like one of the things on a Friday night when you finished school, or if your friends would get together, and that was the thing you watched before you went to bed, and then you sat up all night talking because you were too scared to sleep.
It almost seems like people like that, when they start a show, they get themselves painted into a corner too, because when you have a show that you're having to air, it's like, oh my gosh, we need this. And they sit for hours and hours and hours, and that's not exciting content. So I can see why somebody would be tempted to embellish or maybe help it along.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time the ratings would be pretty poor if all they did is sat there and looked at a load of people on night vision. They can do that and watch Big Brother if they want to and watch them all snoring and sleeping.
All right, well, let's get into talking about some of these ghosts. Which one would you like to touch on?
Probably for me, from my experience myself, I think the Screaming Woods is very interesting. The Highwayman and the Red and White Ladies are probably the ones that I could say I had the most experience around. But there's also the Phantom Coach and Horses and the Old Gypsy Woman.
Well, let's start with the Screaming Woods.
That's what I was just saying. I wanted to start because that is very intriguing and very freaky.
I'm seeing these trees. Like, I don't know if you've ever been over here, but have you been to Disney World or Disneyland?
I have.
Did you go on Snow White's Scary Adventures ride?
Yes.
So that's what I'm picturing, are these angry trees with these horrible faces and branches and things.
Yes, I genuinely would prefer that. Daring Woods is horrible.
Now, is this named for the Daring family?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
The Daring family was very prominent in Pluckley, and many locations are named in their honor, from Daring Wood to the Daring Arms Pub. They are of Saxon origin and descend from Ethelward, King of Deira. They began to rise in stature at the beginnings of the reign of Henry II. They inherited the manor of Sorrenden to the east of the village. The Darings were barons who created libraries and launched new regiments. The Daring Arms was originally a hunting lodge built for the family in the 1840s.
So they were kind of the original family that were there, both there and there's some other locations within the village that are named for the Daring. So the woods itself, I think from what I gathered there was a very lovely lady that worked at one of the pubs there that gave me some information. She said that there's somebody that I should look into is Frederick Saunders, who had a book out, Pluckley as My Playground, I think it was, in sort of the 1950s. And he talks about Daring Woods a lot there in that. And she was really helpful, this lady. And the great thing about Daring Woods is that it's a public accessible place. But that also, I think, narrows down the possibilities of it being something genuine. In my eyes, it's an over-contaminated place, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. So it's like, is it really you're hearing ghosts screaming, or is it other noise that's legitimate?
Well, wind going through branches can sound pretty scary.
It can sound really, really horrifying. And I think I'm saying this as though you don't have foxes. Of course you have foxes, but in the UK, during certain seasons of fox life, the foxes are mating and also having babies. And the sounds that foxes make can sound like someone is being brutally murdered. It's horrendous. It can be incredibly frightening, and it is literally like a cross between a baby and a lady screaming. It's absolutely petrifying.
So there's lots of stories of people hearing screaming coming from the woods. and it very well just could be foxes, especially, back in that time. I'm thinking these hauntings date back to the Darings had more of a foothold back in the Victorian era, I think.
Yes, they did, yeah.
And back then they might not have been as familiar with foxes and things making those noises.
And owls and things like that as well. There's a story behind. So behind the Daring Woods is the Screaming Man. Now, apparently there was a man who worked at the brickworks, which isn't anywhere near the woods, but it's not far away from where the Highwayman is also reportedly seen, was near the woods. But in the brickworks, a young man got his arm stuck in some machinery, and apparently you can hear his scream that just sort of resonated across the woods and other areas of Pluckley, and that's kind of where the Screaming Man comes from. And they've kind of mixed in the Screaming Man into the Screaming Woods and things like that. So it's quite fascinating where they think that the screaming sort of came from. But there's from what I've been able to research, there's no actual fact of why there would be screaming in these woods, other than people being frightened, and from this man who unfortunately lost his arm in the brickworks.
So he lived, but he just lost his arm?
As far as I know, there are some reports that say that he died. There are some that said that he didn't lose his arm, that he was just quite badly hurt. But I think from what I've actually managed to get is the fact that he did survive, but then died later on from his injuries.
Well, this kind of reveals how urban legends work. You get a story that gets started, and then they kind of mix together, and they all become one. So now the Screaming Man, who probably didn't die anywhere near those woods, is haunting them because there's the screaming effect that goes with both.
Yeah, exactly. And there are foxes, there's deers, there's pheasants, there's even peacocks in Deeringwood. So for some people, I think that if you've ever heard a peacock sound, it's quite a strange, you don't expect them to make that sound. History that like you said, it could be made up or folklore or whatever, that talks about a Halloween massacre that happened in the woods, and it was in the newspaper, and if you look online you can find it, but all of the photographs that are actually linked to that are actually from completely different places. They're actually from a multiple murder that happened in Philadelphia in 1949. And there's also pictures of people saying that they found lots of bodies, and it was actually a Soviet officer with Lithuanians who was actually exhuming bodies of Jews in the woodland near somewhere completely different in America. So there's lots of fake things online, and having to filter through it was quite difficult. But speaking to people was probably the most interesting.
Okay, because I was going to ask, because I had found the article about the 20 dead bodies found in the woods, and they were thinking that it was a massacre. So thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah, there was no massacre. That it was actually photographs taken from somewhere completely different and put up on there just to make the Screaming Woods a little bit more exciting, saying they dug up all these bodies, but it wasn't ever proven to be. It could have been a story, could have been right, but the photographs definitely weren't. And as far as I can tell from records and stuff, there was never a murder that was found, a mass murder especially in Deering Woods.
Okay, and so probably the 4 teenagers disappearing after seeing lights and stuff was probably another made-up one.
Again, it's another story. I just can't find any genuine roots to it. I think the thing is in the UK is the tabloids will literally put anything up. I mean, you say that you've got a third arm and you've got 19 people around your house sort of asking for interviews, and you figure out, oh no, actually it's just a piece of string that I found off my t-shirt, but people will still print it saying you've got a third arm. There's also a story that goes by where there's a gentleman that's quite well known for saying, oh, I made everything up that I said about Pluckley Village, and that he embellished lots of stories and things like that. So there's a guy from the village called Desmond Carrington, and he said that he did concoct a whole string of stories that featured in a television article in the 1950s, and I'm pretty sure that's where a lot of these stem from. I think once you plant seeds into people's heads, they start believing and start seeing and start experiencing things that if you'd never mentioned it, they probably would never see, or they wouldn't look at twice or whatever.
Earlier you had mentioned a figure called the Highwayman, and I don't know if over there it means the same thing as here, but generally when we mention Highwayman, it's somebody who's robbing people as they're traveling. Is this the same thing?
This guy, so the Highwayman is also known as the Screaming Man. Okay. And Highwayman is someone who operated on Fright Corner, which is another area, which is actually, its real name is Frith Corner. but they call it Fright Corner. Now, there's two things there. So some people that I've spoken to about this, a highwayman is someone that works on the highways.
Okay.
So you could go down that route, but you've also got a highwayman who travels the highways, and whilst doing, because highway is actually kind of an American terminology rather than a UK. We say things like dual carriageway or motorway or road. Highwayman is actually quite an Americanized way of saying things.
The Red Lady, what is her story?
There's lots of accounts and lots of legends that are kind of attached to this woman, and it's supposed to be a lady that's actually part of the Daring family. She's apparently seen in the manor Surrenden, which is actually in the parish itself. So she's supposed to be in the graveyard of St Nicholas Church, and she's apparently looking for the grave of her child, which is supposed to be an unmarked grave. Both herself and the baby died in childbirth.
St. Nicholas Church is 900 years old. It is the Diocese of Canterbury. The church is beautiful inside with a crown post roof in the nave. There are 2 stained glass windows, with one in the east representing Jesus, and the one on the north features the Annunciation. These windows were designed by Francis Stevens and John Hayward in 1954, so they are quite modern. Built in 1475 and at the east end of the south aisle is the Daring Chapel. There are brass pictures depicting members of the Daring family. Sir Edward Daring had them made in the 1630s to represent his family ancestry. Perhaps it is the connection of the Daring family to this church that draws the Red Lady to haunt the place.
She is a dark-haired lady, and she's supposed to be in a very, very bright red gown. She was supposed to have had an illegitimate child, and that's why I don't think the baby had a marked grave. In the actual churchyard itself, the baby is buried somewhere, but nobody knows exactly where. So at least the child was buried in a graveyard. It was just an unmarked grave. And it's suggested that the lady in red is actually one of the ladies of Daring. So it would have been quite scandalous back then to have had an illegitimate child.
You know, these women looking for their babies are becoming almost as common as the lady in white. There are so many stories of that.
I think from what you and Denise say about the fact that children don't come back, I'm wondering, this is just an idea in my head, is the fact that they're looking for their children because they do pass on and they go somewhere better. And when the adults are still here, they're still looking for their children.
Oh, that's a really good thought.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, for me, I've had an experience of a young boy. But again, like you said, it could be something that is someone else manifesting or something else manifesting, should I say. And you don't 100% know. But and I do hope this, because I've had some very, sad facts of some beautiful people, very young people have passed away that I know of. And I really do hope they go on and they're not stuck in this limbo of being here or being a residual haunting. Even that, it must, after a while, it must take its toll on somebody, and especially someone so young that doesn't understand necessarily what's going on. But I do, when I heard your podcast and you were saying about the fact that you don't believe that there are children's spirits, it kind of gave me a little bit of hope in the fact that maybe these children do pass over, and that's why lots of women are searching for their children and things like that.
That is an amazing theory. Thank you for sharing that, because that hadn't even occurred to me, but I think that is very possible. This Red Lady, does she seem like she's more residual or intelligent?
Again, it's a matter of opinion, I guess. There are people that say that they see her in the same place. It's continuously in this churchyard of St Nicholas's Church. But then there are other people that have said they've seen her in other areas. Whether or not it's again the same lady, or if it's another lady, or if it's someone planting seeds into somebody's head. But I guess the earliest sighting that was recorded was this Frederick Sanders that said that in his article in 1955 that he'd seen sightings of a red lady and a white lady and a grey lady. But the actual story that I managed to find, and there's several stories actually, is that there was a Sir Daring who was the 4th Baronet in 1679, who died actually on my birthday in 1711, was married to Mary Fisher in 1704, and Mary died in 1707. That was a result of childbirth of their youngest son. There's also ideas that Mary was born at a different time and that she had was a girl and not a boy. And there was Lady Mary Daring, the wife of this baronet, that she was buried at the church in St Nicholas's. But then there's also saying that they got married at St Nicholas's and that she was buried somewhere else. So there's lots of different things that it could well be.
Well, at least there's some history behind it, so it has more of a possibility rather than the urban legends.
Yeah, so this lady in red is supposed to be Mary Darings, or Lady Mary Daring, is what most accounts are saying. We've got the white ladies. We can discuss the white ladies if you like.
So tell us about these white ladies.
There is a white lady pretty much in every ghost story you hear about, in every village that you've gone to. And again, this could be, there are some facts behind this that could be linked to the legend, but most of the time they are legends, bless them. So there's 2 locations that are sort of known for haunting by this white lady. So she's supposed to be another lady of the Daring family, but she's supposed to be a younger lady. So it seems to me that the Darings kind of aren't willing to let go of good old Pluckley village. But you'll hear in this story that I'm about to tell you how it very much sounds like the Red Lady. The White Lady is supposed to be very, very beautiful lady. She comes from the graves and the graveyard of, again, St. Nicholas Church. So again, kind of very similar to where the Red Lady is. She has been supposedly buried in a white gown, and that she was given a single red rose. And she's seen floating in the churchyard on misty nights, and is also seen manifesting within the chapel itself. So there's sightings of her in the graveyard and then inside the St. Nicholas Church itself. She's also seen to be kneeling at the chapel. So she seems to be obviously a lady who very much is looking for answers, I guess, from maybe God or something like that from herself. So it's also said that she's been seen in the library at the Daring family home, which is Surrendon in the village itself. There's reports the fact that she has dark hair and that she has a bright white gown. So for me, it sounds exactly the same as the lady in red, but that she's in a white dress. So I don't know whether or not it could be a change of seasonal attire.
Or, if she is more intelligent, maybe she can choose how she appears.
Yeah. And also I think from the sound of the single red rose, it could be that people have seen the lady in white, but they've concentrated on the red rose maybe and seen red or something. But it just sounds very much like she's exactly the same woman. But it's also, there's a grey lady that's exactly this. It's the same story. It's somebody from the Daring family that they seem to be sort of around St. Nicholas's Church, and one of the places I went to was churchyards, and I do think that, again, it's that thing of being cold. You get mist in front of you and fog, and I think people forget. I mean, the UK is renowned for fog. We're a damp place that creates fog in lots of different places, and I think that itself is something that people see, like the mists and the things like that. But there are some quite incredible pieces of footage online and things like that of these mists that come in quite concentrated lumps and things like that you could think to yourself, well, that could be a spirit, and they're saying that could be the Grey Lady, but all I see is mist.
Legends say that Lady Daring was so beautiful that her husband had her body embalmed and encased in 4 coffins, 3 of lead with an outer oak one. The theory is that since she did not receive a prompt burial, she is at unrest and now haunts her former home. In 1952, Surrendon Daring was burnt down in a mysterious fire. A few parts still stand today.
This St. Nicholas Church seems to have a lot of hauntings involved with it. Is it just because it has the graveyard there?
I think it's because the Daring family are all buried there, so it's almost like a family plot. And I think because a lot of people think that it's the Daring family that do the majority of the major hauntings in Pluckley village, that's kind of where they all stem from, I guess. Legend and folklore and the actual history behind it is actually quite hard to pin down. The first 3 Darings were the baronets, so the men themselves were actually all Edward Darings. So you had Sir Edward Daring, the first baronet, Sir Edward Daring, the second baronet, and Sir Edward, the third baronet. And then the 5th and 6th and 7th baronet were Sir Edwards as well. So they seem to, and the 8th, I think, as well. So they seem to quite like the Edward Daring name, that's for sure. They all died quite young as well, from records, in their sort of 20s and early 30s. And I guess that was reasonably, I wouldn't say normal, but it was, lifespan was a lot shorter then. But 3 of the Edward Darings married Marys. And so I think they say that these 3 Marys, 2 of them are the White Lady and one of them is the Red Ladies, but they could all actually be the same Mary Daring.
Sure.
For instance, Sir Edward Daring, the second baronet, who died in 1684, I think it was, he was married to a Mary Harvey. And they had 17 children.
Oh my God.
Like, that doesn't even... I don't even know how you can equate to that when you're so young. Out of the 17, 10 of them survived to childhood, which is quite a big thing, really.
Sure.
I think they just kept having children because you never know which ones of them survived. I'm sure there was lots of love involved and things like that, but in terms of keeping on the family name, I think a lot of them had lots of children, so they had at least 2 sons to carry on the name, and in case one son didn't make it, etc. So
sure. The Daring Arms was originally a hunting lodge built for the family in the 1840s. This pub is reputed to be haunted by an old woman who sits at a table near one of the windows. She wears period clothing but looks so lifelike that people usually think she's a real person until she vanishes.
Is Pluckley Village truly one of the most haunted places in the world? Is it the most haunted place in England? Do ghosts wander the woods and buildings of this village? Is Pluckley Village haunted? That is for you to decide.
Well, it sounds like a fabulous place. I want to visit for sure.
I definitely want to go there.
Our next episode is going to feature a location suggested to us by Emily Ridner, and that is the Whitney. So looking forward to bringing that to you guys. And we want to let you guys know, who are executive producers, that we are planning on another virtual meetup at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on August 28th, 2016. We'll get that set up and send the links out to all of you. And that's for any executive producers that are giving at just the $1 or above level. So all you got to do is be giving us $1 a month, and you are into the virtual meetup.
Right. So we look forward to meeting all of you. We've had a really good time the last one we had.
We did. And it went a long time, too. And we have a couple of reviews from iTunes. First up is from the UK, Alan T2510. 5 stars, very enjoyable and spooky. What an amazing podcast. I've been listening to podcasts with true ghost stories for several years, and I'm glad to say History Goes Bump has quickly become one of my favorites. Although many of the stories are U.S.-based, I still enjoy hearing the history and the ghost stories associated with them. Diane and Denise's personalities shine through, and they complement each other perfectly. Well, thanks so much, Alan, and I bet you're happy to hear this episode that we just did here, because this is over in the UK, so thanks for listening. And then we have from the U.S., Mr. Bear in Miami, Late Night Company, 5 stars. I absolutely love this podcast. Loved it from the get-go. I drive for a living, and I've spent countless nights up and down I-95 listening to you guys in the wee hours of the night. Makes for an informative and spooky drive. I love the dynamic between you guys and feel like I know you guys personally. Keep up the good work. And as for the comment about Denise's voice, I find it soothing. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bear. And a shout out to you. I saw your message to us over on Instagram as well. And we would love to meet up sometime. Thank you so much for the suggestion and for joining us. We love doing this.
No problem.
Absolutely.
It's been such an honor to speak to you guys. It's incredible. It is literally it's like having a speaking podcast that speaks back to me when I say silly questions.
Of course, if this happens later on when you're listening, just be a little bit nervous.
Yeah, go and see my doctor.
Yeah, we should not be talking back to you. I want to thank you all for joining us. I've been your host, Diane.
This has been Denise.
And I'm Alana.
You guys take care now.
Bye-bye.
This episode has been brought to you by our executive producers. Thanks.
Want to keep the spooks away? Give us a review.